This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to the show. This is Phil McKinney, your host and creator of Killer Innovations. We are in the Colorado studio. We're actually getting ready to head out onto the road tomorrow, traveling. We'll be traveling for the next, 3 to 4 weeks. And we'll be doing the rest of the shows from the road. So wanted to get this show done, get it recorded so that it's ready for next week, leading into the U.S. Thanksgiving holiday. So let's get right into it. One question that I tend to get when I'm doing AMAs or Ask Me Anything sessions with whether it be fans of the show or if I'm public speaking or I'm at another event or with reporters is around my career. You know, how did I go from starting off as a software engineer to ultimately becoming CTO at HP to now being the president and CEO at Cable Labs? Organization's been around for 31 years. That's a world-class R&D and innovation lab. How did this all happen? But more importantly, the one question I'm going to answer today is around leadership struggles. A lot of leaders get into a position and they put the facade on, and they want to make it sound like it was easy to get there, and they just had the right skill sets, etc. But I can speak from my perspective, and that is each step along my career, as I progressed and as I achieved some level of success, I ran into struggles that I think every leader has. So what I'm going to share with you today over this entire show are the struggles that I had to overcome, the struggles that I faced. And these are struggles most, if not every leader will come across. And rather than just trying to hide them or make them not appear as big of an issue, I'm going to put them out on the table in the sunlight where everybody can look at them and everybody can examine them. And I'm doing this with some level of confidence from the standpoint that I do a lot of coaching and I do a lot of mentoring of other leaders. And these are some of the same things I hear from them. And when I share my own stories, I mean, it's not just, I don't think about it as validation, but it's just confirmation that we're all alike. We may think we're different. We may think we're unique. We may think, our background and how we grew up and where we came from and what it took to get to where we are now with our careers is unique. But it's not as unique as you may think. And that is really today's show. So let's jump right into this. This first one is one that I've experienced as I've gotten more career success. And that is the one I call lonely leadership. That's right. As you get higher in the organization, the harder it is to find people that you can talk to, people that understand where you're coming from. Now face it, great leaders are told that transparency is a must. Be transparent, share everything, don't hold anything back. And being close and sharing everything with peers early in your career was easy, and that provided that support network. People who were doing similar work to you, who are kind of at that same level. You could, go do the Friday happy hour and share those stories and commiserate, complain about the boss or whatever. And transparency is important, and those peer experiences were key, in my case, for my success. While transparency is important, it is to a point. There are some things that you should not be transparent about. One is your own self-doubt. Standing up, sharing with your employees your own self-struggles can sometimes cause them to be concerned about the viability of an organization, particularly if you're the founder and you are you're venture backed and you're trying to scrape together, you need everybody to be positive. So in some cases, being transparent may not be the best thing. Also, you should never be transparent about your opinions of others, especially key stakeholders, because they will find out. They will hear it. I have a philosophy of never burning a bridge. No matter how people may have mistreated me, I never burn the bridge. And that has come back in spades to turn out to be the best decision I made early in my career, running back across people later in my career. The other thing you should not be transparent about is confidential information shared with you. I've seen many potential leaders, people who look like they were going to have great career success, get sidelined because of one bad call when it came to sharing something that they should not have shared, or they shared it with the wrong person. Someone who violated the trust, violated the integrity. It is hard to build a reputation of trust and integrity in leaders. That is absolutely crucial. It is a requirement. And while it's hard to build, you can lose it with just one action. You may have spent 10, 20, 30 years of your career building up your integrity, that people within your organization can trust you with information, trust you with their opinions. You don't share, you don't gossip. But that one time you share it and it gets mishandled, and all of a sudden it's out there, you just blew what took you 10, 20, 30 years to build up. And I've seen more leaders' careers get totally sidelined. And once you lose it, if you did have a situation where you shared it and something confidential gets out there, it's very, very hard to rebuild it. So just don't risk it. The end result of all of this is you will be lonely as a leader. So who can or should you share with? Well, one person most people talk about is share with your spouse. Not always. When I was one of the 5 founders of Telligent, which was a point-to-multipoint fixed wireless provider back in the late 90s, headquartered in Northern Virginia, we were kind of the hot thing. We were on the front page of Business Week and Forbes and Fortune and you name it, Wall Street Journal, New York Times. Everybody was writing articles about us. We were growing like gangbusters. When we did the IPO, we ran into a situation between my wife and I where she was at her hairdresser getting her hair done, and the hairdresser is drilling her on information about Telligent. He'd read all the articles. He knew who she was. He assumed she had access to confidential information, and this hairdresser got aggressive with asking information like, hey, how did the quarterly numbers look? Is Phil happy? And poking her constantly. So her and I, we came to a kind of an agreement, because she did not want to be in a position where she would accidentally reveal some information. So to protect her, I never share confidential information with my wife. Never. She doesn't want to be in that position. Now that makes it hard because I cannot share with her. She's my spouse, right? She's my closest friend. She's my closest confidant. But in this case, I cannot share with you. Another one that you can think about sharing though with is your coach or mentor. Let your stakeholders, your board, know that you've got a coach or mentor, particularly if you're a CEO in a high-profile position. This ensures that it's fully above board. They know that you've got a coach or mentor. And in the case, if you're going to share confidential business information with a coach or that mentor where they're going to help you think through decisions or be a sounding board or whatever that role is, then they should sign a non-disclosure agreement. Now, I've coached and mentored many board members and many senior executives, and I have no issue with signing an NDA if they're going to share confidential information with me. But if you are shared that confidential information, then you cannot share it to others because, again, you can lose that integrity. You can lose that credibility. All of this goes to say is one of the first struggles that I have found in a leader that is very hard to deal with sometimes is that it is a lonely role in leadership. You will be lonely. There are not a lot of people that you can share your story with as you get higher in your organization. And that is something to think about. And make sure you do find people that you can share with, a coach, a mentor, if your spouse is open to that, and others. Don't go anywhere. We have more to go, talking about leadership struggles that I had to overcome. You're listening to Killer Innovations. Welcome back. This week's show, we're talking about leadership struggles. And what I'm sharing are the leadership struggles that I had to overcome as I progressed my career, starting in a very technical role to ending up as a CEO. Now, in the first segment, we talked about lonely leadership, the fact that as you get higher in an organization, the more lonely you will be. You can't be friends and hang out with your employees the way you did your peers. They need their space to commiserate with their peers, more than likely to complain about you as a leader, and they don't need you hanging over them. And at the same time, you have to be a little bit on guard as to what you share. So in this segment, what I want to talk about is the realization that I had when I started progressing and getting more success in my career is that what got you there will not keep you there. The skills and capabilities that got you that next step up are not the skills that will keep you there or progress you to the next level. So for instance, in my case, strong technical skills. I started off as a software engineer, computer graphics, data visualization, image analysis was really a specialty area for me. Now, quite honestly, I have not sat down and done deep technical work probably in more than 15 years, right? I do a little PHP work on my servers just to prove to myself that I can still do a little bit of it, but it's been 15 years. It's not what allowed me to have my success both at HP and at Cable Labs. So the key, though, is what are those skills? Well, those skills got me on the map. They got me noticed. They built my reputation. As a leader, what are the new skills that I had to learn that I didn't have a lot of visibility in? Now, in my case, I had a very fortunate experience with my mentor, Bob Davis. Right out of college, Bob sat me down and said, look, you're very good at what you do. You are a top-notch software engineer. But is that going to be enough? If you want to have a great career, you need to be more than just what's referred to as an I person, meaning I'm like I-shaped. I'm very deep. I know my technical expertise very well, but I needed to be a T-shaped. I needed to be deep in one area, but have a variety of experiences across a wide range of roles. And what Bob did was he rotated me 6 months in marketing, 6 months in sales, 6 months in IT, 6 months in finance. I did everything. And this was within Prentice Hall Publishing, which was one of the largest book publishers back in the early 80s when I started. And it was through that experience that rounded me out and gave me a broader sense, but that didn't really give me all the skill sets I needed. So what are the skills that I had to quickly get good at? If you're going to continue on your track and you're getting, knighted for that next level up, you don't get a lot of time to sit back and slowly learn it. You have to be able to grasp and understand what is going to allow you to be successful in the role that you just got promoted into and do it quickly. So what are some of those that I really had to move quickly on? One was organization design. How do you organize the teams? How do you structure them? And there's no such thing as a perfect organization. And you have to be willing to adjust. Change is the new norm. Some people are like, wow, can't you just leave it as is for a little while? As things change, requirements change, you have to be tuned in to how do you create an organization structure that allows you to have success. Now, I've worked in roles where I've had thousands and thousands and thousands of people in my reporting structure, and now I have 200 people in my reporting structure, which to me is small. To a lot of people, that would be huge. But thinking about organization structures, not something they taught in a electrical engineering course. Second is reading people, the ability to look at people and read them, understand, how they're reacting to what you're doing, where they may be giving you signals of agreement or non-agreement. Each person is unique and different. You have to commit to learn the person. Do not try to peanut butter the approach. Don't say, well, all CEOs think this way, all chief information officers think this way, all general counsels think that way. You do that, you will fail as a leader. You need to understand that every one of us, every person you interact with in a leadership role is unique and different, and you have to commit the time to really understand how that person operates. The third skill that I had to work at, and I had to work at this one pretty hard, is consensus building. The skills that, consensus building in a software engineering is what? You let your code speak for itself, right? I'll show you I'm right. I'm going to crank out this piece of code, and this thing's going to work really great, and you'll adopt it because I'm going to let my technical skills. Consensus building is, again, you need to learn the individuals. You need to learn individual objectives. In my case, I'm unique in the fact that in my role as a CEO, I'm funded by 65 companies from around the world, 14 CEOs, many of them multi-billion-dollar businesses that they run are on my board. So I have 14 CEOs who are used to being the ones to make the call, and I've got to get them to all work together. So what do? Before every one of my board meetings, I do a one-on-one call with every CEO on my board to walk through the topics, walk through what's going to be presented, walk through the questions I'm going to ask. It's the old analogy of don't ask for a vote if you don't know what the result is going to be. I want to make sure that I have that one-on-one opportunity to hear about any concerns, questions, thoughts before we get into the board meeting. And therefore, in the board meeting, it's a facilitated conversation amongst them, not around the information that I'm presenting. And so that is one of the things that I have found as being really key. And the last skill that I wish I'd spent more time learning before I started getting into more senior roles was objective setting. How do you set good objectives? I'm a big believer of OKRs, objectives and key results. Go online if you're not familiar. I've actually done a previous show on OKRs. You can find it in the archives. You want to make them clear and measurable. Do not use objectives as a baseball bat. It is the way to create clear alignment, to make sure everybody's going the same direction, and to grant autonomy. Say what you want done, what the end result needs to be, but let your experts use their skills to define how you get there. Use and leverage the creativity and the ingenuity of your team to achieve that ultimate success. So again, in this case, what I'm talking about in this segment is what got you there will not keep you there. There's a whole different set of skill sets that you have to overcome as a leader if you are going to be successful. So don't go anywhere. We're going to continue our conversation on leadership struggles. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. We're continuing our conversations around leadership struggles, sharing with you some of my stories, my experience as I went from a very deep technical career into a CTO role to now a CEO role. And what does that really mean? And what are the things they don't tell you when you're making these migrations across your career. I can tell you I'm thinking back across my entire career, and I can tell you nobody sat me down and said, okay, here, you're being promoted in this new role. And by the way, here are the key skills you do not have that you need to go find in order to be successful and drive that success that they're expecting for you on. And that is not something that anybody sets you down and talks you through. So let's continue this conversation. Let's talk about one insight that I had, and I got this insight, again, not by being told, but by having a bad outcome in a couple situations. And that is, ideas and statements that you make as a leader have consequences. Ideas and statements that you make as a leader, whether it's one-on-one with somebody or to across your entire organization, has consequences. You will say something that gets taken out of context, and all of a sudden, it becomes the new law. Now, when I became CEO, I knew that this would happen because it happened to me at HP at Fairmont as the CTO. So I told my direct staff at Cable Labs that one of the most common statements they were going to hear was, Phil said, and then something behind it. Phil said this, Phil said that. Using my name to cast air cover over some action that they were taking or about to take. And in many cases, it was being misinterpreted, or in some cases, it was out and out being misused. Now, one of the best proof points of this across my career is press coverage. Now, if you go out and you do Google and you just Google for Phil McKinney, I don't know, I think I'm the first 16 pages of Google are all articles about me. And what you'll find if you go spend the time and you read each one of if it's the news section of Google and you read each one of those articles, do you want to know how many articles that are on those first 16 pages or whatever it is on Google that are articles about me, how many of them are correct? You want to take a guess? Take a guess. 0. Not a single press article coverage got it 100% correct. And that has a huge downstream effect. One case early on when I became CEO at Cable Labs is we were out in Silicon Valley, and we had just opened up our new Silicon Valley office, which is in Sunnyvale. It's right at the corner of at Matilda in West California. So it's right near downtown, right near the train tracks there. In fact, we're right across the parking lot from Walmart R&D. And so we're getting ready to build the building. It's getting ready to launch. I held an event up at the Four Seasons in Palo Alto with the CEOs that make up my board. Some press came in. They wanted to cover it. So we're doing interviews and answering questions. Great. They go write the article. Then the article comes out. And oh my gosh, I had a absolute firestorm in the office. Why? Because the way the article was written saying that while Cable Labs has been around, I don't know, at that time, 25 years, 24 years, 25 years at the time, Colorado would continue to do kind of the same old stuff, but all of the new, cool R&D, innovation stuff would be coming out of California. So, given that 90% of our staff was based in Colorado, what do you think that message was? Well, they were upset, and rightfully so, based on what they read in the article. Now, in reality, that is not what has happened, and that was never the intent, and that is not what was said during the articles. They made a couple of big leaps and connections. At that time, I was still living in California, so they assumed that it would, whatever the innovation work would be close to me, given what happened when I was the CTO at HP. What they didn't know is I was getting ready to move to Colorado. Question, comment, topic never came up. So the reporters made a huge amount of leaps, wrote this article that was completely wrong, that had consequences, had employees upset, had employees who were very concerned about, what was the long-term viability of the Colorado office, etc. And I ended up having to call an all-hands meeting, at that time we were, 130 employees, having to get all 130 into our big conference rooms. Fortunately, I can do that. We have enough space in our headquarters to get, everybody together in Colorado. And I walked through and said, that's not true, that's not true. And I made a commitment to my staff on that day. And that commitment is you will hear from me first. You will not read an announcement in the press first. And in fact, our policy, and this has turned into kind of a culture thing at Cable Labs about what we call the no surprise rule. And constantly reminding them that don't believe the press, because overall my entire career, the press is consistent. They're batting a 0 to date over my entire career and all the articles that have been written about myself or my work. Batting a 0. So they're consistent. And also reminding the staff that I will tell it to them first. So even before I say something to my board of directors, I say it in an all-hands meeting in front of the entire staff. Before we present the slides to the board, the entire staff, including the receptionist, including the facilities people who are in the room, anybody and everybody gets to hear what I'm going to say before I say it to the board. Because again, ideas and statements have consequences. If they're taken out of context, that can be disastrous. And I had to learn this the hard way. This is just one example, but I've had a lot of these examples. And part of this has changed how I actually operate. Every morning, I recognize that I am walking on stage. So I get to the office. I usually get there about 7:15, 7:30 in the morning, and I'll sit in the car for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, just kind of getting myself mentally ready, because I know as soon as I walk out of that car and I walk in that front door, anything and everything I say and do, the expression on my face will have an impact on the organization. And even if you work hard at it, it can go very wrong. And look, we're never perfect, right? You need to be hyper vigilant in what you say, how you say it, understanding how it will be interpreted, how it can be applied or executed. We've put in a little shorthanded nomenclature at the office, which is, assume positive intent, right? If you read something, if you read, someone replies to you in Slack, if you read something in a press article and it raises a concern, then go ask. Don't swirl it around in the organization. Go talk to that person and ask. Assume positive intent until proven otherwise. And the only proof is after you've talked to the person. No matter what it looks like, how it sounds, how it reads, how you interpret it, assume positive intent. Communication is absolutely critical. So ideas that you convey, like, hey, wouldn't it be nice if we did X? And then all of a sudden everybody's way off into the weeds. I've had that happen to me more than once. I have to be very careful about the ideas I convey and how I convey them and statements I make. And as a leader, take ownership and responsibility for every message you say or write. It's not the other person's fault if they misheard it. It's my fault, and I need to do better the next time when I convey that idea or I convey a statement such that it doesn't have a negative consequence. It has a positive consequence. So this is one that I've learned, and I've gotten burned on it more than a few times, and I'll probably get burned on it again, but something I got to be diligent on. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this quick break. Welcome back. Continue our conversation today on leadership struggles and sharing you my stories, things that I had to go through as I progressed through my career, things that I kind of wish somebody had sat me down and shared them with me. So this is my opportunity to share them with you. The last one that I want to talk about is one that you are going to probably flip out on because it's not one you would expect to hear from me, and that is creative self-doubt. That's right. Self-doubt on my own creativity. Now, the number one skill leaders are expected to have is creativity, ingenuity, leading to new products and services and operational innovations. It's why you're being promoted. They want that creativity. It's the number one skill that CEO and boards are hiring for today. Now, many new leaders being promoted get to that leadership role because of an idea, because of an innovation they are credited with. Right? They came up with a really hot product, or they worked at a company that had a reputation for being highly innovative. Why do people recruit Apple executives, or why do people recruit Google executives, right? So the best proxy that I can think of that is an interesting one to look at is Nobel laureates, right? So as a Nobel laureate, you've been awarded the Nobel Prize because of some idea, something that is uniquely created by you, something that you conceived, that you thought of, that you thought would be a really great new idea. So the question, though, is if you go back and you look at Nobel laureates, you would tend to think that they peaked in the early part of their career, right? So they came up with some new idea. It took many, 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 many years to prove out that theory they had was actually truthful. Look at Einstein. He came up with the theory of relativity while he was still working at the patent office. He wasn't even in academia, and it was decades before they could create experiments and validate it, and ultimately Einstein winning his Nobel. There was a recent study that was done at Ohio State, and in fact, I'll put a link in the show notes at Killer Innovation so that you can find it. But what they found is that there was 2 peaks of creativity based on age. There was an early peak was found for laureates in their mid to 20s to early 30s, and then a later peak for those in their mid 50s, right? So 2 peaks. So the question came down is do you still have your creativity? In my case, I was fortunate early in my career to have worked on some really great products that went on to win Product of the Year awards at the old Comdex show, for those of you old enough to remember that. And then, going to HP and now at Cable Labs. And the question is do you still have it and do you need it? Yes, you need it. Yes, you still have it. It is a self-doubt situation because what the Ohio State study found out is it's a different kind of creativity. There's conceptual innovators. These are the type of innovators that think outside the box. They're challenging the conventional wisdom, and they tend to come up with their new ideas suddenly. Conceptual innovators tend to peak earlier in their careers before they become immersed in the already accepted theories of the field. Basically, the young innovators who do not know any better. Now, there's the experimental innovators. These are the innovators who accumulate knowledge throughout their career, and they find ways to analyze, interpret the information in new ways. They kind of digging back through what has happened in the past and finding new ways to look at it. And they tend to do long periods of trial and error, really to uncover the new opportunities. And therefore, these are innovators that tend to have their success late in their careers. It's conceptual innovators, experimental innovators. And success comes from recognizing that as an innovator, we need to shift and change. What worked for us early in our career is not what's going to work for us later in our career. And that's what happened with me. I kept trying to apply what I'd always done. Hey, it worked well for me. I'm going to repeat it. And I struggled in some cases. I had that creative self-doubt. And so for me, it really required for me to shift from that conceptual to that experimental innovator, and recognizing that everything did not need to come from me. I, in fact, view my innovation output as not my own innovation output, albeit I work really hard. I do every morning exercises to exercise, my creative muscle. You can search in the show archive to hear what my exercise regime is about idea generation and inspirations that I use, etc. So, but for me, is I needed to recognize that my innovation output isn't just for me, but it's from the organization and teams I put together. It's from clear communication, setting a vision that others then innovate on how do we achieve that vision, and being able to help and nurture the right ideas, and knowing what to say when, and reading people to win support. So again, across all of these struggles that I've had, which have included lonely leadership and recognizing that skills that got me to my success weren't the ones that were going to keep me there, to recognizing that ideas and statements have consequences, to my own creative self-doubt. These are things that I wish someone had sat me down and talked me through and given me some guidance. So I hope you found this useful to you as you progress along in your career, no matter what level you're at. Doesn't have to be a CEO level. Doesn't have to be CEO at a big organization or CTO at a big tech company. This applies no matter what size of your organization. So again, I hope you found this helpful as you progress along in your career. If you want to chat about what is going on in your career and you're needing some advice, hop on over to the innovators.community. That is where I hang out. It's a free online community for and by innovators. So we're going to wrap up today's show. Thank you for taking the time. Hey, can I ask for one ask? And that is, tell one person about the show. Help us grow the listener base. Help us grow the interaction and the role that we all can play in driving the innovation success around the world. So just tell one person, and also post a comment for us over on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. Greatly appreciate it. See you next week. Bye-bye.